My cousin tried to frame me for breaking Grandma's jewelry until the hidden camera rolled. When Grandma passed away, it felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. I didn't just lose a grandmother. I lost the only adult in my life who had ever truly seen me. She'd call every Sunday without fail, even when I was too busy to pick up. She'd send me letters, actual handwritten ones, telling me about the weather, the birds in her yard, and little updates on her cat Muffin. Now she was gone, and the silence left behind was deafening. I took a leave from work and drove the 4 hours back to the house where I'd spent most of my summers growing up. It was a beautiful old Victorian just outside of town, with creaky wooden stairs, stained glass windows, and a garden full of roses that still bloomed despite everything. It felt haunted now, not in a scary way, but in the kind of way that made your heart ache with nostalgia. The family had agreed to gather over the course of the next 2 weeks to help sort through Grandma's things. Mom and Dad were staying at a hotel nearby, but I asked if I could sleep in my old room. It still had the faded wallpaper with tiny stars on it and the same chipped nightstand where I used to keep my books. Being there made me feel closer to her. I needed that. The first few days passed in a fog of sorting, remembering, and quietly crying when no one was looking. But it didn't take long before the tension started to show, especially from Tori. Tori is my cousin, technically only 3 months younger than me, but she's always acted like she was 10 years older and the queen of every room she entered. We never really got along, but it wasn't outright hostility. It was more like this simmering rivalry I never asked for. I was the quiet one, the sensitive one, while Tori was loud, popular, and always needed attention like a plant needs sunlight. She showed up wearing designer sunglasses and a bored expression. Her mom, Aunt Cheryl, was even worse. The kind of woman who made backhanded compliments seem like an Olympic sport. "Oh, Emily, you look mature. Life must be keeping you busy." Translation: "You look tired and single." It all stayed civil until we opened Grandma's bedroom closet. Inside was the jewelry chest. Everyone knew about it. Grandma had collected pieces over decades, some expensive, some just sentimental. There was a strand of freshwater pearls she wore on her wedding day, a diamond brooch passed down from her mother, and a delicate gold necklace with a tiny sapphire that I remembered playing with as a child when I'd crawl into her lap. That necklace, that was the beginning of the storm. We laid everything out on a table so we could catalog and photograph it. Aunt Cheryl, of course, kept muttering things like, "She told me I'd get the brooch," I remember distinctly. And Tori was hovering too close, her fingers constantly grazing the edge of the table like she was waiting for a moment to claim something. Then, on the 4th day, everything blew up. I came downstairs in the morning to find everyone already gathered around the dining room table. Tori looked furious. Aunt Cheryl's lips were pursed so tightly they were almost white. My mom looked uncomfortable and Dad was just confused. On the table in front of them was the sapphire necklace, snapped clean in half, the chain twisted and broken. "What happened?" I asked, blinking in surprise. Tori stood up like she'd been rehearsing. "We think you did it." I laughed. I actually laughed. "What? You were the last one in here last night," she said, arms crossed. "I saw you go into the room after dinner." "I went to grab my phone charger," I replied slowly. "That doesn't mean I touched anything." Aunt Cheryl jumped in. "You've always been careless, Emily. You don't understand the value of these things." "Mom," my own mother tried to say, but Cheryl cut her off. "I mean, honestly, how do you explain this?" She pointed at the necklace like it was a murder weapon. "That sapphire is worth over $3,000. And now look at it." I felt heat rise in my chest. "Are you seriously accusing me of breaking it on purpose?" "No one said on purpose," Tori said sweetly. "But maybe you weren't paying attention. Maybe you knocked it over, or who knows? Maybe you thought it looked better on you." I was speechless. Dad tried to mediate. "Let's not jump to conclusions, okay? Maybe it was already weak, or maybe someone who always felt like Grandma loved Emily more finally snapped," Tori said. It was like a slap in the face. That wasn't about the necklace anymore. That was venom she'd been storing for years. The room got quiet. "I didn't touch it," I said, my voice shaking. "I swear." Tori shrugged and turned away like the conversation was over. Aunt Cheryl whispered something under her breath to my mother, and I didn't need to hear it to know it wasn't kind. That night, I packed my things. My parents begged me to stay, but it was clear where the wind was blowing. They weren't accusing me outright, but no one was defending me either. Not really, except for Noah. Noah was Tori's younger brother. He was 19, quiet, observant. That night, he knocked on my door with a hesitant look. "I don't think you did it," he said simply. I wanted to cry. "Thanks." He hesitated. "I know she's been acting weird. Tori, I mean, I saw her come out of the room late last night. She looked nervous." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because if I'm wrong, I'll never hear the end of it." But he looked up at me. "I remember Grandma saying once she installed one of those old nanny cams. after someone broke in like 5 years ago. She said she never told anyone. I blinked. You think there might be a recording? Noah nodded. If the battery still works. My heart skipped. Maybe the house still had secrets left. Maybe Grandma was still watching in her own quiet way. The idea stuck with me all night. I barely slept, replaying the moment over and over. Tori's smug expression, the way she crossed her arms like she'd won something. My heart was pounding with more than just hurt now. It was anger, and it was growing. The next morning, I called Noah. Hey, I said, my voice still raspy from crying. About what you said last night, are you sure Grandma mentioned a camera? I remember it clearly, he replied. She told me after her front window got broken one winter. Some random act of vandalism. She said she bought one of those nanny cams disguised as something ordinary. I think she said it was shaped like a clock, or maybe a book. Did she ever mention where she put it? I think she said it was in the library. The library, Grandma's favorite room. She'd read there for hours, surrounded by her antique books and soft lighting. If she was going to hide a camera anywhere, it would be in there, close enough to the hallway and dining room, where the jewelry had been laid out. I made up my mind. Noah, I said, I'm driving back today. Can you meet me there tonight? You sure? I need to know the truth, and if I'm wrong, then fine. But if I'm right, he didn't answer right away. Then, I'll meet you at 6. I arrived back at the house just before sunset. It felt surreal pulling up to the place I'd left in shame only 24 hours earlier. The windows glowed amber in the fading light, and the rose bushes swayed gently in the breeze. It was calm, serene, and completely at odds with the storm I carried inside me. Noah showed up 10 minutes later, holding a flashlight and a small toolkit. I thought it might be hidden in the wall or something, he said, shrugging. We stepped inside, locking the door behind us. The library smelled like old paper and lavender. Dust danced in the air as we carefully scanned every corner. We checked behind books, under shelves, behind picture frames. Nothing. I was starting to lose hope when Noah stopped suddenly. Wait, he said, pointing toward the upper corner of the tall wooden bookshelf by the window. That clock. What about it? It's battery-powered. But look at the back. We pulled it down carefully. There it was, tucked behind a sliding panel in the back. A tiny lens no bigger than a pencil eraser, and a slot for an SD card. My heart skipped. Please, please, please let there be something, I whispered. We popped the SD card out and plugged it into my laptop. The files were all dated, some of them as old as 3 years ago. The battery must have been dying because there were long gaps. But then, wait, this one, Noah said, clicking on the most recent file. The timestamp was from 2 nights ago, the night before the necklace was found broken. The video began in grainy black and white, showing an empty hallway. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, movement. Tori. She entered the dining room quietly, looking over her shoulder. She was wearing pajamas, no makeup, and had her hair tied back in a messy bun. She moved quickly, like she knew she wasn't supposed to be there. She approached the table where the jewelry had been laid out. Then, in perfect clarity, we watched as she picked up the sapphire necklace, admired herself in the mirror with it, then tried to unclasp it, only for it to slip from her hands and fall to the hardwood floor with a muffled thud. She froze, bent down, picked it up, examined the damage. Her mouth moved, cursing, probably. She paced, clearly panicked. Then she did the unthinkable. She walked to the side table, opened the decorative box I'd used to store some of my things, and placed the broken necklace inside. She wiped her hands on her shirt and left. I stared at the screen. Noah muttered, "Holy crap." There it was, the truth. My cousin had not only broken Grandma's necklace, but had deliberately planted it in my things, knowing it would point the finger at me. Suddenly, everything felt heavier. My chest, my throat, even my arms. My cousin had tried to ruin me, over a necklace. But it wasn't just about the necklace. It never was. This was years of jealousy, bitterness, and resentment coming to a head. She'd waited for her moment and struck. I felt sick. We need to show this to someone, Noah said, sitting back. I know, I whispered. But not just someone. Everyone. You mean, like the whole family? I nodded. They all need to see it. No more whispers, no more passive accusations. I want them to see it for themselves. Noah looked nervous. She's going to explode. You know that, right? She already did, I said bitterly. She just thought she got away with it. The next morning, I sent out a message to the family group chat. Simple and direct. I'd like everyone to come by Grandma's house this Friday at 5 p.m. There's something important I need to show you. It's about the necklace. Almost instantly, Cheryl replied with a sarcastic thumbs-up emoji. Tori left the message on read. But the rest of them? They agreed. Even Mom and Dad said they'd be there. That week felt like a year. I couldn't eat much, couldn't sleep more than a few hours at a time. My mind kept going in circles, rehearsing what I'd say, what they might shout back, what Tori might do when she realized the truth was out. But mostly, I thought of Grandma. I imagined her watching from somewhere I couldn't see, sipping her tea, chuckling softly as everything unraveled the way it was meant to, like she'd always known that someone would try to twist the truth after she was gone, and had left me the thread to untangle it. And now, I just had to pull. Friday came. I arrived an hour early to clean up, set out chairs, and make sure the laptop was charged and the video was ready. My hands shook as I set up the HDMI connection to Grandma's old TV. My palms were sweating so much I had to wipe them on my jeans every few minutes. Then, at 5 sharp, the front door opened, and the confrontation I had been dreading began. The door creaked open, and in came my parents first. Mom with her cautious eyes and tight smile, Dad giving me a brief, reassuring nod. They took seats near the back of the room, both noticeably uncomfortable. A minute later, Aunt Cheryl swept in like she owned the house, followed closely by Tori, who looked at me like I'd just wasted her precious time. Behind them came Uncle Rob and his wife, who mostly stayed out of family drama, but had clearly shown up out of curiosity. Then Noah. He gave me a tiny thumbs up as he took a spot near the laptop. The living room was quiet, unnaturally quiet. You could hear the soft whir of the ceiling fan overhead, and the faint creak of a floorboard under Tori's stiletto heel. "Well?" Cheryl asked, folding her arms. "What's this all about?" Tori leaned back in her chair, clearly irritated. "If this is another one of your victim speeches, Emily, I swear—" "It's not," I cut in. My voice was stronger than I expected. "I'm just going to play something. Then you can all decide what you want to believe. No speeches, just the truth." I turned to Noah. He hit play. The screen lit up with grainy black and white footage. Everyone watched as the hallway came into view, then the dining room. At first, no one said anything. Then Tori walked into the frame. I felt the room shift. She was visible in perfect clarity, sneaking into the room, reaching for the necklace, dropping it. Gasps erupted as she examined the damage, then carefully opened the box and planted it with my things. Aunt Cheryl sat frozen. My mother slowly covered her mouth. My dad looked stunned. Even Uncle Rob leaned forward in disbelief. The video ended. Silence. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady. My heartbeat wasn't. "Well?" I said, looking straight at Tori. She blinked. Once, twice, then stood up. "That proves nothing." "What?" Noah blurted. "That doesn't prove I broke it," she snapped. "That could be an old video. You could have staged that. Anyone could have dropped it earlier and— What, now you're playing detective? What are you, 12? Aunt Cheryl stood too. "This is absolutely ridiculous. You ambushed us with some grainy video and expect us to— "You saw it," my mom whispered, still in disbelief. "You saw her take it." "She was trying it on," Cheryl barked. "What girl hasn't tried on a necklace in the mirror? That doesn't mean she broke it, and it certainly doesn't mean she tried to frame Emily." "Then why?" I asked slowly. "Did she put it inside my things and walk out?" Tori's lips curled. "Maybe I was scared. Maybe I knew you'd freak out, like you're doing now." I stared at her. "You weren't scared. You were calculating. You waited until everyone was gone. You took something that didn't belong to you, broke it, and tried to ruin me for it." "Don't flatter yourself," she hissed. Dad stood up suddenly, rubbing his forehead like he was trying to process it all. "Tori, that video— It's hard to argue with what we just saw." "She always hated me," Tori snapped, pointing at me. "She thinks Grandma loved her more. She was always trying to be the favorite. Don't even pretend otherwise." "No one had to pretend," Noah said under his breath. Tori spun to him. "Excuse me?" Noah didn't flinch. "Grandma didn't hide how she felt about you, Tori. She didn't trust you. That's why she had the camera in the first place." Cheryl rounded on him. "Oh, and now you're attacking your own cousin? This is what happens when you let emotions dictate everything. Your grandmother is dead and we're sitting here playing judge and jury over some old video because your daughter tried to ruin mine." My mom finally spoke up, her voice clear and furious. That silenced Cheryl. I could feel the weight of years pressing into this moment. Old resentments, unspoken rivalries, false smiles at family dinners. It was like someone had finally pulled the curtain back and let the rot show. "You owe Emily an apology," my mom continued. "And I don't just mean a half-hearted sorry. I mean an actual acknowledgement of what she tried to do." Tori's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. I waited, gave her space. Nothing. "Fine," I said. "Then this conversation is over, but I want all of you to remember what you saw, what she did, because I'm done being the quiet one you can blame when things go wrong." I packed up my laptop and started gathering my things. Tori stood stiff as stone, Cheryl seething beside her. Noah followed me to the door. "You okay?" I exhaled slowly. "Not really, but I will be." Behind us, the silence remained heavy. No one rushed to defend Tori anymore. No one excused her, and maybe that was enough for now. That night, I stayed with Noah and his parents. We barely spoke, just sat outside on the porch with mugs of tea, watching the stars come out one by one. I think she always hated that Grandma liked you more, Noah said quietly. She couldn't stand that someone actually earned her respect instead of demanded it. I nodded. She couldn't control Grandma, so she tried to control me. We sat in silence again. She won't come back from this, he added. I didn't want to destroy her, I said. I just wanted to clear my name, and I had. The truth was out. But the damage had been done long before I ever pressed play. The days that followed were quiet, almost unnaturally so. No messages in the family group chat. No calls from Aunt Cheryl. Not even a snarky text from Tori. It was like someone had hit the mute button on the entire family, and to be honest, I preferred it that way. I stayed in town for another few days, mostly to grieve in peace. Grandma's house still felt heavy with memories, but now that the lies had surfaced and shattered like glass, I could walk through the rooms without carrying everyone else's judgment on my back. I needed that space. Not just to feel closer to Grandma, but to feel like myself again. One morning, as I was sipping tea in the kitchen, Noah popped by holding a manila envelope. You got mail, he said, handing it over. I frowned. Here. It came to my parents' house, addressed to you. From a law office? My chest tightened. I wiped my hands on a towel, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the envelope. Inside were 2 documents and a handwritten letter. As I read, my hands started shaking again, but this time, not from fear. It was from Grandma's attorney. The letter explained that she had left a second will, one that had only been delivered after the reading of the first. It was meant to be a private postscript, a letter of trust, the lawyer had called it. In it, Grandma specified that certain items in her estate, specifically the jewelry, were to be left in the care of whoever she believed would protect them with the most integrity. And she named me, not just by name, but in words that brought tears to my eyes. Emily has always been gentle with people and fierce with truth. I trust her to understand the difference between sentimental value and simple possession. These pieces are not just things. They are part of our family history, and I want her to choose what becomes of them. I read it twice, 3 times. Then I folded the letter carefully and just stared at the wall for a long while. Grandma had known. On some level, she'd sensed what might come after her passing. The tension, the rivalry, maybe even the sabotage. She couldn't predict everything, but she still planned for something beyond death. Not just in legal documents, but in faith in me. When I told my parents about it later that night, they didn't say much. Mom just nodded, quietly proud. Dad looked tired, but more from relief than exhaustion. I'm glad she saw you for who you are, he said. Even if not everyone else did. And that was the thing. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I'd been before. Now I just felt a sort of sad peace. There was nothing left to prove. A week later, I returned to Grandma's house one final time. I walked the perimeter, opened drawers, dusted off bookshelves. The silence wasn't so heavy now. It was comforting. Like a blanket of memories wrapping around me, instead of a fog of grief. I found the old jewelry chest again, now reorganized and intact, its lock polished and functional. I sat down with a notebook and made a list, not of monetary values, but of stories. Next to each item, I wrote what I remembered about it. The brooch Grandma wore every Christmas. The ring she spun on her finger when she was nervous. The simple locket she wore at church with a photo of her late husband inside. And the sapphire necklace. That one I took last. Not because of its value or even the drama surrounding it, but because I wanted to make sure it was remembered the right way. Not as evidence in some petty family feud, but as a part of Grandma's story. Later that week, I made an appointment with a local historical society and donated several of the older pieces to be displayed in a rotating exhibit on family heritage. Grandma would have loved that. As I was leaving the museum director's office, I got a text. Tori, I hope you're happy. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. You just had to make it public, didn't you? I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked my phone. No reply. What was there left to say? She hadn't apologized. Not really. Not once. Even her so-called olive branch came laced with bitterness and blame, and I was done carrying it. Her guilt wasn't mine to hold. I never heard from Cheryl again after that. She blocked me on everything. Maybe out of shame, or maybe because she couldn't handle being wrong. Either way, I didn't chase her down. I didn't owe her anything anymore. The next Sunday, I sat in Grandma's rose garden for hours. I pruned a few bushes, pulled some weeds, and sat on the bench where we used to share lemonade in the summer. For the first time in weeks, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not because I'd won some imaginary war, but because the truth had survived long enough to be seen. Because the person I loved the most had known me better than anyone else, and had trusted me, even after she was gone. Somewhere inside, I could almost hear her voice. Good girl, let the rest go. And finally, I did. I returned home 2 days later. The drive felt longer this time, though I couldn't tell if it was from physical distance or emotional exhaustion. My apartment greeted me with silence and stale air. A few dusty houseplants and an overflowing mailbox reminded me that real life had been on pause this whole time, and I wasn't sure I was ready to press play again. I placed Grandma's letter on my nightstand, right next to the sapphire necklace in its velvet box. It felt symbolic somehow. Her voice and her legacy, side by side, both resting beside me like they were keeping watch. I took a week off from everything. No work, no emails, no social media. I just sat with myself, processed the anger, the grief, the relief, let it all settle like silt in water. For the first time in a long time, my life felt quiet, not empty, but still, a kind of peace I hadn't known I needed. Then the second wave came. It started with a call from my mom. "She's trying to spin it," she said with a sigh. I already knew who she meant. Spin what? Tori, she's telling people you edited the video, that you set her up, that it's some vendetta. I rubbed my temples. That makes no sense. She's desperate, Emily. Her reputation took a hit, badly. Cheryl's been going around trying to do damage control, but people aren't buying it. Your uncle doesn't even speak to them anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. I just thought you should know, Mom added. I appreciate it, but I'm not getting involved. Let her spiral. And that's what I did. I let her spiral. I didn't respond when mutual friends reached out to say Tori had been kicked out of a charity committee. I didn't reply when I got a DM from someone asking if I'd really forged the footage. I blocked them. I didn't even react when I found out she'd applied for a PR job and was turned down, because integrity and trustworthiness were part of the requirements. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel sorry either. I just felt done. A month later, I received another letter, this one from the Historical Society I donated Grandma's jewelry to. They were opening a new exhibit titled Quiet Strength, Women, Legacy, and Heirlooms. They'd chosen a few of Grandma's pieces, including the brooch and the wedding pearls, as feature items. They wanted to include a short write-up about her life and asked if I'd be willing to write it. I sat down that same night with a pen and paper and tried to capture the woman I remembered. I wrote about her hands, how they smelled faintly of rosewater and always found mine when I was anxious. I wrote about her laugh, which was warm and sudden, like summer rain. I wrote about the way she carried herself with dignity and patience, even when the world around her felt petty and loud. I didn't mention Tori, not even once. This wasn't her story. It belonged to the woman who raised generations with kindness and steel. It belonged to the granddaughter who finally understood what strength looked like, and who it did not. I submitted the write-up and received an email a week later. They loved it. They were going to print it in the exhibits program. A local paper asked if I'd be willing to do a small interview. I almost said no. But then I thought about what Grandma would say. Tell the truth. Not the gossip, just the truth. So I did. A week later, a small article was published with the headline, Her Grandmother's Keeper, a story of family, inheritance, and integrity. I got a few messages from old family friends. They were kind, supportive. Some apologized for not saying anything during the drama. Admitted they didn't know what to believe at the time. I forgave them, most of them anyway. The silence of some people had said more than their words ever could. Then, late one night, I got an email. It was from Tori. Just a single line. "You really think this makes you better than me?" I didn't even finish reading it. I archived the message and closed my laptop. No, I didn't think it made me better than her. That was never the point. It wasn't about winning. It was about surviving, about standing up even when your voice shakes, about defending your name, not because you're obsessed with your image, but because the people who love you deserve the truth. I hadn't burned bridges. They just revealed themselves to be walkways built over rot. And when they collapsed, I didn't fall with them. Grandma once told me, sometimes the loudest person in the room is just trying to drown out the sound of their own guilt. Now, I finally understood what she meant. The official opening of the exhibit was held on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I arrived early, wearing a navy blue dress Grandma once complimented me on, paired with a soft gray cardigan I hadn't worn since the funeral. The museum was quiet when I stepped inside, but I could already see the display cases being polished, the placards being adjusted, the soft lighting coming to life above the glass. I walked slowly through the gallery. There she was. Not in person, of course, but in every piece on display. The wedding pearls gleamed gently under the lights. The diamond brooch sat front and center on black velvet. Even a little silver hairpin I remembered Grandma using when she'd sweep her curls into a bun. It was all there. Pieces of her life. Pieces of who she was. The final case held the sapphire necklace. Repaired, restored, whole again. A small plaque beside it read, "This necklace was passed down through generations, broken and restored like so many of us. It serves as a reminder that strength isn't in never falling, but in rising with grace, even when no one believes you. I hadn't written those words. The curator had asked if she could summarize the story with something meaningful, something poetic. When she sent me the line for approval, I cried, quietly, in my kitchen, then wrote back, "It's perfect." Guests began to arrive slowly, mostly local art and history lovers, a few family friends, a former neighbor or two. Mom and Dad arrived, holding hands and looking proud in that quiet, awkward way parents do when they aren't sure if they're allowed to be proud just yet. Noah came too, clean-cut, with a collared shirt and that same knowing smirk like he was still waiting for Tori to throw a tantrum from behind a display case. But she didn't come. Neither did Aunt Cheryl. I can't say I was surprised. I heard through the grapevine that they'd stopped attending family gatherings, that Uncle Rob had moved in with his daughter across the state, citing emotional burnout. No one blamed him. I'd never wished them harm. I still did. I just wished they'd stop harming others to protect themselves. After the exhibit tour and short speeches, the museum director handed me a small certificate. It wasn't anything grand, just a simple framed thank you for the donation and the story. "Your grandmother's story moved all of us," she said softly. "It's clear how much she meant to you." "She was everything," I replied, tears catching in my throat. "And I hope now people see her the way I always did." That night, back in my apartment, I lit a single candle and placed it by the window. Something Grandma used to do on stormy nights. She once told me it was a symbol that someone, somewhere, was always welcome home. I thought about her, about the weight of everything that had happened, the betrayal, the accusations, the silence, the justice, the long, slow climb back to feeling like myself again. I didn't need validation anymore. Not from Tori, not from Cheryl, not even from the rest of the family. The only voice I ever really needed to hear had already spoken through old letters, through trust, through memories too strong to be erased by one person's malice. Grandma had trusted me to carry her legacy forward, and I had, not through revenge, not through bitterness, but through action, through grace, through holding the truth gently even when others tried to crush it. I didn't need to get even. I just needed to get free. That night, before bed, I opened the velvet box once more and looked at the necklace. It sparkled in the lamplight, whole and beautiful again. And just before I turned off the light, I whispered softly into the silence, "Thank you for believing me." Then I closed the box, and finally, closed that chapter of my life.